Only in Kentucky can the real Rosie the Riveter grow up in a town that no longer exists because the state submerged it. Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm learning a little bit more about Kentucky, one county at a time, all 120 of them. And today I'm learning about Pulaski County. Pulaski sits in south central Kentucky, covering about 658 square miles, making it the third largest county in the state by land area. The terrain is hilly and dissected, part of the Mississippian Plateau, with limestone bedrock underneath much of the county. The western edge of the county is defined by Lake Cumberland, a 101-mile reservoir with more than 2 trillion gallons of water held behind Wolf Creek Dam. The lake was completed in 1950. It changed everything about this county, and not only in the ways that are easy to celebrate. Pulaski County was established on December 21st, 1798, carved from Lincoln and Greene counties. It was named for Count Casimir Pulaski, a Polish military officer who came to America after hearing that the colonies were fighting for independence. He became a brigadier general in the Continental Army. He died on October 11, 1779, from wounds sustained at the Siege of Savannah. The county seat is Somerset, established in 1801 on 40 acres donated by a settler named William Dotson. The site was chosen because of a nearby spring. The path to that spring became the town's most traveled street. Somerset's name honors Somerset County, New Jersey, reflecting where many of the early settlers had come from. A post office opened in 1803, the city incorporated officially in 1887. Within a decade of the railroad arriving in 1875, Somerset's population had jumped from under 600 to over 2,600. The Southern Railway Depot south of downtown created a whole new neighborhood, and the city has been the commercial center of South Central Kentucky ever since. Free Frank McWhorter was born into slavery in Pulaski County in 1777. His enslaver allowed him to hire out his own labor on the side and keep a portion of the earnings. During the War of 1812, when saltpeter was desperately needed to make gunpowder, McWhorter managed a saltpeter mining operation so effectively that he accumulated money beyond what his enslaver took. So in 1819, he purchased his own freedom. And then he kept going. Over the next several decades, Free Frank McWhorter purchased the freedom of 16 members of his family, one by one, each requiring years of labor and saving. He eventually moved to Illinois, where he founded New Philadelphia, the first town in the United States platted by a black man. He applied for the town's plat in 1836. He continued purchasing family members from slavery until he died in 1854. By late 1861, Confederate forces had established a defensive line across southern Kentucky, stretching from the Big Sandy Valley in the east through Cumberland Gap, through Mill Springs on the Cumberland River, through Bowling Green, all the way to Columbus on the Mississippi. It was an ambitious line. It was meant to hold Kentucky for the Confederacy and position Confederate forces for a push north. Confederate Brigadier General Felix Zollicoffer was responsible for the eastern end of that line. In November of 1861, he moved his forces to the south bank of the Cumberland River at Mill Springs, near the community now called Nancy, about 8 miles west of Somerset. Then, for reasons that military historians have debated ever since, he moved most of his men to the north bank, where they would be closer to Union forces. His superiors ordered him to move back south of the river, but he couldn't. He didn't have enough boats to cross quickly if threatened. Well, Union Brigadier General George Thomas left Lebanon, Kentucky in January of 1862 and marched through rain-soaked country toward Logan's Crossroads, where he planned to link up with additional forces from Somerset. Confederate Major General George Crittenden, Zollicoffer's superior, saw the opportunity and ordered an attack before Thomas could consolidate his forces. The Confederate march through the night was hampered by rain and mud. Many of the men carried antique flintlock muskets that became nearly useless in wet weather. Regardless, the battle opened at dawn on January 19, 1862. The Confederates initially pushed the Union lines back. Then, in the fog and gun smoke of the dark woods, Zollicoffer made a fatal mistake. He rode toward what he believed were Confederate troops firing on their own men. He was actually approaching the Union 4th Kentucky Infantry. He rode close enough to speak to them before anyone realized what was happening. Colonel Speed Fry shot him. Zollicoffer fell from his horse in a white raincoat, dead. The Confederate center collapsed in confusion. Crittenden rallied his men and ordered a general advance. The Union 9th Ohio Infantry turned the Confederate left flank. The Confederate lines broke. They ran back toward Mill Springs, crossed the Cumberland River in a panic, abandoned 12 artillery pieces, 150 wagons, and more than 1,000 horses and mules, and kept retreating all the way to Tennessee. The Battle of Mill Springs was the first significant Union victory of the Civil War. It broke the eastern section of the Confederate defensive line across Kentucky and opened the way for Union advances into Tennessee. Today, the battlefield near Nancy is a national monument. Zollicoffer Park contains a mass grave of Confederate soldiers from Alabama, Mississippi, and Tennessee, more than 100 men buried together whose individual names were mostly lost. The Union dead are interred at Mill Springs National Cemetery, one of the oldest national cemeteries still receiving burials in the country. As I mentioned, Wolf Creek Dam was completed in 1950. The Army Corps of Engineers had been authorized to build it years earlier as a flood control and hydroelectric project on the Cumberland River. As a result, the dam created Lake Cumberland, 101 miles long, with an average depth of 85 feet, holding more than 2 trillion gallons of water. It's one of the largest man-made lakes in the United States. The problem was that the town of Burnside sat right where the lake needed to be. Burnside had been a thriving community at the junction of the Cumberland River and its South Fork. It had lumber mills that sent products around the world. It had retail stores, hotels, churches, a bank, a post office, restaurants, and Burnside Academy, the first Wesleyan prep school in Kentucky. It had a rail and steamboat shipping center. It was, by any measure, a real town. When the dam was authorized, the residents of Burnside were told their town would be flooded, and they needed to leave. Some went willingly, taking state money for their properties. Others didn't want to go. They were eventually removed anyway. Before the dam was completed, every structure in Old Burnside was demolished. The bridges were taken down, the roads were torn up, the town was erased. Then the water rose and covered it all. 4 houses survived because they sat on a ridge high enough to avoid the flood. Those 4 houses still stand on Lakeshore Drive in the new town of Burnside, built on higher ground. They're the only physical remnants of what was once a prosperous river community. Burnside does make one claim that has nothing to do with its flooding. In 1908, 2 years before the Boy Scouts of America was officially organized, a woman named Myra Greenough Bass organized a local troop of 15 boys in Burnside using official Boy Scout materials she had obtained from England. A sign at the edge of town declared Burnside the birthplace of Boy Scouts in America. Then there is a woman who grew up in Burnside before any of this had happened. Rose Will Monroe was born in Pulaski County in 1920. She grew up in Burnside, in the town that would later be drowned by Lake Cumberland. During World War II, she moved to Michigan and worked at the Willow Run Aircraft Factory, building B-24 and B-29 bombers for the war effort. She was working a riveting machine on the production line when actor Walter Pidgeon came to the factory to film a promotional video encouraging women to join the war workforce. He spotted Monroe, learned her name, and cast her on the spot. She became the face of the Rosie the Riveter campaign. She appeared in posters and government films that circulated across the country. She embodied the image of American women doing the industrial work that men had left behind to fight. Pulaski County has produced a striking number of other people worth knowing about. John Sherman Cooper was born in Somerset in 1901 and became one of the most respected figures in 20th century American politics. He served as a U.S. Senator from Kentucky, as ambassador to India and Nepal, as the first U.S. ambassador to East Germany, and as a member of the Warren Commission. He was a Republican who consistently broke with his own party on civil rights in Vietnam. He was called more than once the conscience of the Senate. Vermont Garrison was born in Somerset in 1915 and became one of the most decorated military aviators in American history, achieving ace status in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. He flew combat in 3 wars. Edwin P. Morrow, born in Somerset in 1877, served as governor of Kentucky from 1919 to 1923. Venus Ramey, born in Somerset in 1924, was crowned Miss America in 1944. Hal Rogers, born in 1937 in Wayne County, but long associated with Somerset, has represented the 5th Congressional District in the U.S. House since 1981, making him one of the longest-serving members of Congress in Kentucky history. Somerset also has a community called Stab. The name was chosen in part for its brevity, as the first choice the residents submitted was rejected by postal authorities for apparently being too long. Unfortunately, we don't have the original name, at least I don't think. The post office called Stab opened in 1922 and closed in 1994. There's a community called Bee Lick, set in local tradition to refer to beehives near Salt Lick. There's a community called Science Hill, named by a geologist named William Bobbitt, who visited and collected and analyzed local rocks and applied his chosen name to the post office in 1874. Science Hill appears in the 2014 film Edge of Tomorrow, when a character played by Bill Paxton identifies it as his own hometown. Another character asks where the name comes from. Paxton character says, "Never asked, don't care." The county's major festival is Summer Nights Cruise, a monthly classic car show held on the 4th Saturday of every month from April through October. It began in 2001 and has grown into one of the largest car cruise events in the Southeast, drawing tens of thousands of people to downtown Somerset. The city calls itself the car cruise capital of Kentucky. Last year, in May 2025, an EF4 tornado struck Somerset and the neighboring city of London. 19 people died. One of them was in Somerset. The tornado caused widespread damage, and a mass casualty incident was declared for the city. Pulaski County today has a population of about 65,000, one of the larger counties in Kentucky outside the major urban centers. Lake Cumberland generates roughly $150 million in tourism revenue annually in good years. The houseboat rental industry on the lake is substantial. The county ranks first in Kentucky in forage production and second in beef cattle. It has a Toyota supplier, a hardwood flooring manufacturer, a furniture company, a dairy processor, and a regional hospital that serves a wide swath of south central Kentucky. So, that's Pulaski County. What'd I get wrong this time?